This one steeps for 27 minutes.
What? No. How long does the other one take?
Welcome to a bonus Decoding TV episode about the Widow's Bay Season 1 finale. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek. We're going to discuss our overall thoughts on the finale and recap some of the big reveals that occurred therein. I also just want to point out, thanks to all of our paid subscribers, we've been recapping the latter half of the season of Widow's Bay on the paid feed. And so really big shout out to all the paid subscribers at decodingtv.com who helped to keep the podcast going and got several more recaps that we did of the previous few episodes of Widow's Bay. Patrick Klepek, this has been one of our favorite shows of the year so far. Probably one of the favorite shows we've ever done on this podcast.
Yeah.
It was just renewed for season 2 because the word of mouth has been white hot on this show. It has increased in viewers since the first episode. So it's all leading up to this, the season 1 finale of Widow's Bay. There's going to be a season 2. We'll talk about how this one sets it up. But I do want to hear, do you think Widow's Bay season 1 stuck the landing?
Absolutely. I sort of adore this show top to bottom. Couldn't be happier with the sort of questions set up for our central character, what they're wrestling with at the end. I think they nail that as just a really interesting moral, ethical question to sort of work your way through. And it's beautiful in the sense that, yes, we're getting season 2. I cannot wait. I'm so excited to see how they try and what they do with the setup that kind of happens at the end of this season and what else they might do with this premise. But if there wasn't another episode, it would be the most ominous sort of ending to a show, but it would have told a story that you could imagine how it lived on. Like, there are so many interesting threads in world building that happen over the course of this episode in particular. It feels like an episode that was crafted with a sense that it was probably going to live on beyond a first season, but doesn't overplay its hand. Like, it ends up still just being really solid, interesting world building out a place that I want to know more about. But if there was nothing left for the world of Widow's Bay, man, I feel like you sketched out an entire world that I can think about and theorize about and have conversations about and not feel left unsatisfied. So I think they have a really clear arc over the course of this season in which they told all sorts of great mini stories along the way. And like, the episode of the week stuff worked for me. The broader story worked for me. I come to the end of Widow's Bay as happy as one could have imagined with a season of television. And I think it's going to end up standing as an all-timer as the years go on, regardless of what happens in subsequent seasons.
I'm glad you liked it. I will say what I liked about the finale is that it feels like the whole season feels like a complete idea. And I really liked how this finale brought home some of the themes of the entire season, specifically around what can you control in life, right? Like, Tom Loftus is somebody that like wants to control everything. And I'll just say that, without getting too much into detail, maybe I can relate with some aspects of Tom Loftus' personality. But the finale is very much about how uncontrollable the world is and how we need to accept this in many ways. And so I love the sort of conclusion of this season as like putting a cap on this idea of what the show is trying to say about just how life is absurd and terrible, which, by the way, show creator Katie Dippold has said, like, that's what she is trying to say. She's trying to say, like, the horror of life and the absurdity of life coexist. And that's what she tried to communicate with the show Widow's Bay. And I think she did a wonderful job with it. Now, in terms of the episode itself, though, I will say that not my favorite episode. Not my favorite episode of the season. Definitely leans more on the horror thriller elements than the rest of the show, which I found to be much more comedic than this finale. There were some very funny moments, which we'll talk about, but overall, I thought it was more of like a straight up like thriller / solution to a mystery box thing, rather than the sort of bizarre, strange, off kilter tone that the show is known for and that I love so much. But overall, like a pretty solid ending, and we'll talk about some of the implications. Let's get to it. So, in this episode, Tom looks at Ruth's medical file because he's about to go over to her house and theoretically take her life, because he believes that killing her will end the curse and make the storm go away and allow people like Tom's son Evan to leave the island because he's born on the island. He sees in the medical file that she can't take oxycodone and diazepam at the same time. So maybe that's going to come in handy. Meanwhile, when he arrives, Ruth thinks Tom came to take her to the shelter, and they kind of have a fun interaction where Tom learns much more about Ruth. I love this whole sequence because Ruth has always been a kind of quirky side character that I never thought we'd learn more about. And then you go into her house and you realize she has this whole life, and there is this amazing part, like, uh this show, Widow's Bay, has one of the strongest prop games of any show that I've ever seen. Like, the props are just next level art design and implementation into the show. But Tom sees how full Ruth's calendar is, including help Deirdre down and help Deirdre up. What is that? Well, it turns out there's this woman named Deirdre that needs help coming down her stairs every day. And you just realize, like, this person, Ruth, has occupied like 1%, maybe less, of Tom's brain space. But then when you meet her, you see like how full their life is. It like expands your notion of who they are. And I think that's just true of anyone in real life as well. And I love that it happened in the show. Um, Ruth also shows Tom Evan's bedroom, like where he sleeps over, and she says, "I bought this car poster at a garage sale, and it's like a poster.
It's just a random car.
It's like a Geo. It looks like
boys love cars.
it's like a Honda Civic. It's just like a 1986 Honda Civic. It's hilarious. Anyway,
The
Patrick,
ladder.
anything from the house tour that you want to mention or stuck out to you?
Well, this is one of those shows that over its running time, your observation about the props and the sets, I would love nothing more than some ability to like walk around one of these sets and like look, because you get the sense that there's so much that probably doesn't make it into an individual shot, but that it's lived in, it's a place, like there's a story behind like everything that is in this space. And I'm sure it'll be just such a delight to just walk around and pick things up and look at it and just get a sense of how they filled out the world of this place. And her house really encapsulates something that Widow's Bay as a show is striving for in everything that you look at, where everything feels considered. Like, this is where, when you talk about, you know, when the showrunner Kate Diepold talks about how long she's been conceptualizing this show and thinking about it and what does it all represent and what's happening in this space, you feel it in sections like this. Like, you can only have a fullness to the world because you sat and considered it, because you can fill it with things. And I think it's such a testament to the show that you can have a character that seems like a one-off joke that is only present to sort of fulfill a bit, and then by the end they're a full character despite doing nothing other than just being sort of a bit or a passing reference prior to this moment where they are given the spotlight. And so all of that worked really beautifully for me. And you know, this notion of trying to express this idea, I think people have, you know, if life is like beautiful and nightmarish, I think different people have different perspectives on like what the ratio of that is and how you cope with it. And I'm definitely probably someone that like is more like beautiful and hopeful than nightmarish. I acknowledge the nightmarish stuff, but it's not as top of mind. And I think this show, like, this is a showrunner who I think the ratio is different. Like, they like views life much more nightmarishly and then uses the hope to like get through that. And I think there's something beautiful about what the show is trying to express in this final scene, because like the quandary in front of our characters is like, I think it's very reasonable. Like, if you could give everyone on this island a full life because this one person no longer has theirs, you know, people like I guess not moral implications aside, like moral implications included, that's a fairly reasonable sacrifice, which are the sort of things that happen on a societal level every day. But here it's so personalized. It is not something thought of on the macro level. It is on the micro level. Like, this is a person that you can look at and you have to stare in the face the idea of so many people's lives with the information that we like have as we enter the episode would be better if she was no longer here. Is that worth it? Well, sure, it's easy to say that on paper, but then you've got to be the one to do it. And I think the journey they go on with Tom to arrive at an answer to that question that's what made the episode really sing for me.
Yeah. I like all the little touches in the house, like when they're making the tea and it takes 25 minutes to steep, and you know, he says, "Well, can you switch it to the shorter one?" And he's like,
I'm not going to waste herbs, Tom.
"What are you talking about?"
So good.
And good things come to those who wait, the little thing on the wall. But yeah, there's an amazing line in the show where he says, "Have you ever heard of the trolley problem?" And then she says, "You mean back in 42 when we tried to build one and all the workers disappeared?" Which is just wow. That is immaculate writing.
And I want to know. I don't think that's a pass. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I bet if like there's a story behind that. Like, that's
Yeah.
not made as just an offhand. Like, there is probably some sort of same way that I predicted this when we first started watching the show. I want to know what's in Tom's basement because I know there's something in Tom's basement.
Yeah.
He was really scared that his son went to the basement. What is in the basement? Perhaps in season 2 we'll find out.
Well, Ruth says she wouldn't pull the lever for the trolley problem. And she has a very beautiful quote, and this is something that will stick with me. She says, "The runaway trolley is life. The lever is me. You can't control the bad things that happen in life, Tom. But if I pull that lever, it's a choice."
And I'm choosing to kill that person. I could never do that.
Also, she quotes from a like, what is it called, needlepoint stitching thing that she has on the wall.
I can't read that one.
But it's like tiny text.
It's a paragraph. It's not a quote.
And the Tennessee Williams quote is, "The world is violent and mercurial. It will have its way with you. We live in a perpetually burning building, and what we must save from it all the time is love," end quote. So beautiful thoughts, and
I
really
don't know,
well
Ruth,
put.
though. I think sometimes you do have to make a choice. Like, it's a beautiful thought, but I actually think that's the coward's way out.
Wow.
Ruth. Which is,
Wow.
but
I guess we know what Patrick's perspective on the trolley problem is.
But why I loved it that it's expressed in that exchange, because she does not understand the gravity of what is the context of Tom being there, but they are representing like dual approaches to the problem, which is not acceptance that there's an ethereal being that is damning us like here on the island, but like life, you can view life as an ethereal being like damning us to like the island that is existence. And you know, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you wrestle with that? Do you but here, based on the information that Tom has, there is an action that could be taken that would meaningfully make many people's lives better. And then I guess for Ruth, it's like, well, that's the taking of one life despite knowing those actions is not worth it. And then for Tom, it's like, well, I think it might be. And now I'm not the one that's actually having to kill an old lady, but you know, stepping back, it's like, I do think sometimes you do have to make an active choice to like for the betterance of others. And then it becomes a question of,
We get it. You would kill the old
I
lady.
would kill her. I would
need
kill
to,
her.
You don't need to say it so many times.
You're
We
not
get
going
it.
to
We
kill
get it.
Ruth?
Maybe. I don't know if I could after
You
that
strike
speech
me
she
as
gave.
very much of I'm going to kill a Ruth. Like, I didn't even know this was a question. Like the way you're framing this back to me is like I'm sort of I feel like you'd be the first person in the door. Like, oh, Patrick, you don't have to do it. I've got this. We would walk to the door together and be like, no, I'm good. You can stay in the car.
Maybe, or maybe I would listen to what Ruth had to say. You know, maybe.
Okay.
Anyway, Tom decides to take the Patrick approach and mash up the drugs for Ruth. But you know, as Ruth is passing out, he has some actual introspection. He says that he knew something was always wrong with this island when he still brought tourists here. He knows he's put these families in danger. While Ruth is drugged out on the couch, she confesses that she had an affair at 40 years old and had a child.
I hid it. I just was not in a good place.
I love Tom's growing sense of alarm when she's telling the story. It turns out that the child is actually Tom's wife, Lauren, and therefore Evan is a descendant of Richard Warren.
Let's go.
I will say I watched this with my wife and her friend, and they predicted this 2 episodes before the end. And because it's like, hey, they never explained what happened with the wife, and the wife's always been mysterious. And so it's, you know, we were all kind of like predicting what's going to happen at the end. What's going to happen at the end? It's going to turn out that like Evan is a descendant of Richard Warren. And that is in fact what happens. And honestly, part of me wishes, Patrick, I hadn't watched the show in advance so that I could have predicted it last week. And then everyone would say, wow, David Chen, you're very good at this. But I couldn't because I saw it already. You know, it reminds me of, this is a thing that used to happen during Cast of Kings is like, people would read the books and then write into the show trying to predict what happened in the future, but then like they would already know what happened. And that was a very strange thing that I thought people were doing at the time. Anyway, regardless, I didn't make any predictions because I already knew. However, just as Tom realizes what is going on, Bashir storms in and shoots Ruth, even though Ruth ends up surviving. So, yeah, so that's basically what happens with the Tom and Ruth storyline. There's a bunch of stuff that happens at the shelter. Any other thoughts on the Tom Ruth storyline before we get to the shelter stuff and then the ending?
No, I just thought it was very effective. Like, I think this is a difficult show to find a conclusion on, right? Like, the format of the episodes is such a, I think makes it interesting to try and weave together the monster of the week plus like an arc that like is sort of, and so I think the show does the best that it can, and I think it makes me very interested to see how it would do that in the future. But I thought this was like really satisfying. Like, it's always nice when each of the characters, like Tom is present in so much of the show, but often in an ensemble capacity, and it's just so much fun to watch Matthew Rhys like kind of do a oneer. I know that Ruth is there, but like really this is the Tom show, and he just does. I think he really sells like the moral complexities that he is wrestling with throughout this. So I don't. I just it all worked for me, and I was I mean, we'll get to it, but also profoundly happy with how, well, not happy, but I thought that what happens from here is also extremely good.
So back at the shelter, Wick and Patricia tried to keep the situation under control. Again, shout out to the props. We see like posters on the wall of how to survive a human bite and all these other things that are amazing. As we discussed last week, Bashir's baby is coming tonight. It's funny to hear some lip from the doctor when he says, "Oh, Bashir says she's 7 weeks away from being due," and he says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't go to medical school." I think all these Widow's Bay people have a big chip on their shoulder, Patrick. Anyway, Dale finds an old film that's made for people who have already been chosen by Widow's Bay to be an offering. We learn some things about how this offering process used to happen. There is one soul for each bell toll. And there's all these creepy rules given and advice given. The guy on the video, the sort of film says, "Their fear is necessary. They say it likes the taste," end quote, which is a pretty creepy thing to say. Anyway, there's great social unrest at the shelter, and Bashir then learns what Tom's up to and goes to stop him at Ruth's house. Evan and his friends venture underground and find a really sketchy room, but a man named Kenny goes and shoos them out of there, and then seemingly is consumed by the island beast or whatever to sate it. And then the storm goes away. I have to say, I was mildly disappointed that this seemed to happen basically seemingly by random happenstance, right? This guy being in the room and like he just happened to be in the room at the right time, and then that's what happened. I wish there had been some more purpose towards like who it was that ended up dying and making the storm go away temporarily. So that was one element of the show I didn't really like that much. You know what I mean? I wanted that finale part to be more affirmative, but or more thematically resonant. Patrick, any thoughts on this whole shelter subplot?
I have slightly mixed feelings on, look, I will not believe anyone who tells me that the little video down there wasn't just a direct callback or inspiration to the Dharma Initiative videos from Lost. Like, it just is like 100% feels like you were pulling out old reels to find out like, oh, there was a way we did things down here that you just didn't know. There's a very, the shelter is just a hatch, David, like in a different way. And it feels
also, I'm going to say a lot of like Fallout, the Prime Video show energy in the video as well, like some very like they're discussing this horrifically dark topic in a very kind of light chipper manner,
which I guess I have to see how it plays out. Like I don't like have like strong feelings one way or the other, but it does sort of come out of left field that, hey, by the way, like just in the basement we're like a bunch of like, reels of film that explained how they used to like systematically slaughter people to the great beast down here. That part is, I mean, I can believe it that there would be sort of a cult or some sort of initiative that like by the people on the island who know what the deal is, like how do we protect ourselves, that I maybe that is when Ruth makes a mention about building a railroad and everyone goes missing. Sure can't help but imagine that like that's the bell tolled, and then suddenly you got to bring those people down into the shelter to feed them. But that stuff is sort of it's a little weird, and also it just felt like to give that one character something to do. But I'm interested to learn more about the more formal qualities of how the island has been operated, because given the fact that how dire things get when the sacrifices aren't made, that of course leads you to understandably figure that somebody's been doing the work in the background.
Well, yeah, the most implausible thing I would say is that nobody passed this information on in a concrete fashion before this point in time.
Right.
Right? There's all these people that are reciting all the stuff that's happened on the island, like the old guy and Wick and all these people, but no one has said like, hey, you need to sacrifice a person at this time.
Well, some of the stuff I can't remember. What are the early notes to the pastor read? Something along the lines of like related to the bell, right?
Well, so what we do learn in this episode is that the island creature thingy requires one soul for each bell toll.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I went back to episode 2 when we heard the bell toll at the church for the very first time in this show, I believe.
Right.
And I counted the bell tolls. And in the episode, we actually hear 9 bell tolls.
Mm-hmm.
Then at the very end of this episode, as the episode ends, right, Tom goes to the beach and he takes the little Warren pin and chucks it into the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And then we hear the bell toll again, and it tolls 8 times. So I think the implication is that it needs 9 souls to be fed, and then it has been fed once. And therefore needs 8 additional souls. That's what I think. I'm not 100% sure about that. And if I'm wrong about this, sorry, and please don't get mad at me in the comments. But that is my understanding, is basically like the ending is very bittersweet, because while their immediate danger is over, they still have to deal with this curse, and they still have 8 souls that they need to surrender in order to in order to survive, basically, and quench the island's thirst. It is, in fact, a very bittersweet ending, right? Because they haven't really solved the problem at all, right? They know that Evan is now a descendant of Richard Warren. He can never leave the island unless the curse is broken in some other way, which we don't know yet how that could happen. Ruth has lived as well, so it's she somehow survives being shot by Bashir at the very end, and so there are still at least 2 descendants of Richard Warren alive on the island. So it's kind of a sad ending. And when Tom chucks that pin into the ocean, it has this air of, hey, I'm moving on, but they haven't really been moving on. Like they're not really moving on. In fact, they're still like really in the middle of it, as far as I can tell. So yeah, any thoughts on the ending, and maybe, any thoughts on the season as we wrap up this conversation?
Well, I looked up what the letter said to the priest, and we don't get to read all of the instructions, but the priest, Reverend Bryce, reads a note that says, "Should the bell toll, there are steps you must take. On the north side of the rectory, there is a chamber where you will find ... And like, that's all the insight that we're given. Right. And obviously he takes his life, in the show. So I believe he began to take the steps till he realized what actually he was going to do. But it certainly suggests that the church was one of the ways in which they were, you can imagine sourcing, and like, this is how you protect the flock. Like, and part of doing that is participating in this sort of devil's bargain that was struck, many, many years ago. But like this kind of said at the top, like I feel very satisfied. I feel very full. I'm anxious to learn more. I'm like, cannot wait for this finale to formally premiere and read all the different interviews about like what they're thinking about the next season, how they feel about the finale. Like I cannot wait to devour all of that. And yet, like, to be in a place where I'm anxious for more, but not because I'm lacking answers. Like, everything I want answers to are more just, oh, that's interesting, or I'd love to like understand more about how that works and how our characters respond, more so than, well, they didn't resolve anything concrete. Like, I think it became apparent early on, like, it's very unlikely they're going to solve the problem of this creature. It may be the fact that this show never actually comes up with a solution to like the grander meta problem, and it's more about grappling with, much like the nightmares of life, how do you deal with that, sort of in between, like in that little space. So yeah, it's very cool, because if there was 10 more episodes to watch, of course I'd be onto it right now, but also it was so satisfying that I kind of want to sit with it. Like, I don't need it right away. I just hope, like you said, it's not 3 to 5 years from now. I hope it is, a year and a half from now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think the show ends up landing its main message, which is about the absurdity / horror of life, right? And that ultimately you cannot control the bizarre, horrifying, tragic things that happen to you, but you can control how you react to them. And I wasn't necessarily thinking about that as the show was unfolding, but it does seem like that's what the show was building up to, and it makes sense, it fits, and it provides a nice ending to what has to be one of the best first seasons of television that we have ever seen in our lives. So I'm also psyched for season 2. I really am interested in what they come up with. Yeah, like I'm so curious how they're going to do it, because season 1 has such a specific construction. Like Tom trying to get tourists onto the island um, allows for all these funny, interesting stories to be told. And I have to imagine they are going to change up the structure of season 2, because he is no longer going to try to get people into the island, presumably, right? Like he will understand that it's going to put these people in danger. So maybe it's going to be more about like,
is it the
finding
flip?
stories within
like,
the existing
don't come
cast of
here.
characters.
It's a terrible island. Like it's like the inverse of the New York Times. Like you're trying to drive people away from the island.
Right. But maybe he's going to have to find stories like within the existing group, right? Is my guess.
Yeah.
Or they're gonna try to find stories within the existing group. So we'll see. But whatever the case, the Katie Dippold and Hiro Murai and the whole team behind this show deserve all the praise, and congrats to them for making what was an amazing show that was funny, that was horrifying. It was tragic and sad and introspective, but at the end of the day, just a blast to watch. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.